much. I'm Heather Arnold, local history librarian, and I'm very pleased to announce that Jane Rivett-Carnac, who's the treasurer of the Narre and District Family History Group, will be talking today to us about Irish records. So she's, I've heard Jane talk on many occasions, and she's very entertaining, very informative, very knowledgeable. And she's just smiling there. That's good. Very knowledgeable. And I'm looking forward to this talk. And we will be recording it. So we just record the talk. We won't be recording your images or anything like that. But it will be recorded and put up on our website sometime today or tomorrow. Sometime. I'll send you an email when it comes up. So now I will I'll throw to Jane, and she can tell us all about Irish records. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah.
Now, most of my research has been in Northern Ireland, with a bit in County Clare and a couple of the other counties. But it's fundamentally the same research all over Ireland. And I'm going to hopefully give you a little snapshot of the amount of stuff that's out there and a few hints along the way. Now, my slide change didn't want to work. Okay, first hiccup.
It'll be fine.
Wow, why is that not doing it? Oh, okay. Now, don't be too ambitious. Most of your people you're looking for are very poor and their lives are not well documented. Even the ones who had a trade, it's hard to find a lot of information about, and we've all heard about the great 1922 fire at the Public Records Office, and it didn't destroy everything. It destroyed a lot, but there are ways and means of getting around it. Now good. This is just a quick overview of the things that were burnt and lost in the Public Record Office fire and what is still out there. Fundamentally, half of the Church of Ireland birth, deaths and marriages were lost, but an awful lot had not been lodged with the Record Office. Most of the Catholic registers weren't lodged. Quakers, Jewish records, Methodists were not lodged when the fire happened. So you can find them, but you have to basically find the church to find them. Am I doing okay here, Heather?
Yeah,
it's going. Yeah. Okay, so names are very important in Ireland. They had prefixes depending on the time. They would use it, not use it. It was used all over Ireland. Spellings change, so you might think that your family has always spelt their name this way, but they didn't necessarily. My example here is the McWatters and McWatters brothers. The name is actually McWatters. There was 3 of them. They came on the same ship. Passenger list has one brother spelled as McWalters and the others as McWatters. Naming patterns can also help you depending on the time frame. It can also be a hindrance because families had, 4 sons and every son named the first son after their father. So this is an example of how they did it. And it can get complicated sorting it out. You have to hope like hell that they've got a second name. And remember that a lot of them used nicknames, a lot of them used their baptism names, and they changed the spelling. So it's just something to keep your eyes on. Now, the first thing you need to do in Australia is create a timeline and work backwards. You need to find every date and place and family name you can and connect it slowly going backwards. Make notes of when the famine happened, when the convict ships happened. Establish the time frame you're going to be working in when you get to Ireland and exactly who it is you're looking for. One of the difficulties is people did marry across the Catholic and Protestant faiths. Quite often you'd find they've been Presbyterians in Australia, and all of a sudden you get back to Ireland and they're Catholics. One good place to look in Australia, or in Victoria in particularly, is the newspaper The Advocate, which is on Trove, and it has fabulous obituaries for Catholics in Victoria. Has the odd Catholic referenced interstate, but fundamentally it's a Victorian paper. And it's really, really handy when you're searching for Catholic people, because it quite often gives references back to Ireland. Another thing you need to be aware of here in Australia, and I had this with a person I was helping one day who was quite convinced that this particular person was born in Belfast, and I went, oh, okay, are you sure? Yes, got out their certificate that they had with them, and it's a Victorian certificate saying Belfast. And I said, well, do you think this child is actually born in Victoria? Oh no, I think they were born on the ship on the way out and they just registered them when they got to Victoria. And I said, do you think maybe they're born in Port Fairy, because that was the name of Port Fairy back in that time? It was called Belfast. They were aghast because they were quite convinced that their family was Irish because this child was born in Belfast. Their family was English, but that's by the by. So you create your timeline, know exactly what time frame you're looking in, makes it easier when you get to Ireland. Now, townlands are very important in your family research in Ireland. My three McWatters brothers, when they arrived in Maryborough, they gave their location on documents as Belfast, Knockbreda, Ballymacarrett, Newtownards, County Down, County Antrim, Ireland, and also Scotland, which took a bit of sorting out. So while I was sorting that out, I discovered townlands are very important to find your particular family. Maps help you. This is all the various breakdowns that they have in Ireland. Things like your provinces. If all you've been told is they came from Ulster, that's a very big part of Ireland, Northern Ireland, that you're looking in. Then you need to know where your county is. So my county here, Antrim, at different times my family crossed backwards and forwards between Antrim and Down. Then you've got your civil parishes and your poor law unions. Now, I would have pronounced this, and I did, as Newtownards. When I got to Ireland, I found out it's Newtownards. So sometimes that's how you find out about how your spelling changes, is the fact that if you're lucky enough to be in Ireland, you'll find out the correct way to pronounce it. Now, this is a more recent map of Ballymacarrett, which is the townland where they came from. And they actually came from this area here. Now, this is a recent map. The area where they grew up was obliterated in World War II by German bombing because they're right next to the ports. This is the port area for the shipbuilding where they built the Titanic, etc. And now there's this freeway goes across where their house was. But it's handy to have that information, because then you can look at what the other streets are around you, because I found there were other family members in the area, and it helped. Another thing that's important to remember is with Northern Ireland, across the side here where the adjoining counties are, sometimes you'll find references to them in now County Londonderry is now Derry. You can find references backwards and forwards. So if you're looking in the area that borders like Donegal, you might find references in the public library at Omagh. So it's a thing to keep in the back of your mind of another place to look. Don't just focus on what's next door. So this is a website I found where it gave me a breakdown, and you can see the civil parish for County Downs and the various locations, telling me this is all the Church of Ireland, here's the baronies, here's the poor law unions, the Catholic parish, the Catholic diocese, and down the bottom here is my Newtownards area. And there's lots of websites that will give you this breakdown. No one specific is better than the other, but if you can work out the smallest area, the townlands, you've got more chance of finding your people. Now, when the census were lost, there are other means of tracking down your people. The Griffiths valuation, I use Ask About Ireland, which is on the handout. This is their front page, and it's got the most information for the valuations. It's the most extensive, and it's the easiest to use. You can get information on Griffiths valuation for a specific area, like County Clare. They've done their own indexing and they've just got them on their library site. But if you're not sure exactly where your people are coming from, this is a good way to establish an area that you're looking in and zone in on your people. And it covers the 1851-1861 census time frame, and it does give you a reasonable amount of information on the people. So the next one is, this is the earlier one. This is the Tithe Applotment books. It only gives you the head of the household, and it's only for people who had some property. It might have only been an acre, but it's more for tenant farmers, landowners. Here's another way of narrowing your people down to an area, but it doesn't give you information for people living in houses in, say, Dublin or Belfast or in the main city. Unless they had an acre in their backyard with some potatoes growing, they weren't put on this list. Now, the census, there are two that are complete, which is 1901 and 1911. There's fragments available that have been transcribed. The fragments aren't necessarily originals to view. Most of the time I've found them, they've been transcriptions, and they're not bad, but you have to, as I say, have the luck of the Irish to actually find them. And again, it depends on if you've narrowed down the area that you're searching in. If you were in Northern Ireland, for example, Emerald Ancestors, which is a subscription site, they've got extracts for 1841 and 1851 for some areas of Northern Ireland, not all of it. The National Archives has got 1821 and 1851 for the Republic of Ireland, and only in certain areas. So it's a case of keep your fingers crossed for anything prior to 1901. But looking at the census, this is a transcription from the 1901 census. I find it interesting that the transcription's not done in the normal pattern of the male as the head of the family and then his wife and then the kids in descending order. But it's clear, and you might think that's sufficient for what you're looking for. But if you look at the actual census, this is the page that it was taken from. Beautiful handwriting. Love whoever gave this information and took it down. They even put down that the 2-year-old could not read and write and they weren't married, which I thought was very cute. Not all census is going to be as beautifully handwritten as this one. Also, you get the other pages, so it gives you more information. So down here I find that John and his brother Michael are actually living next door to one another. It gives information about their house. And then if you go to the third page, it tells us that John even had a potato shed, a potato house. So he was reasonably well-to-do farmer. He had a stable, he had feed sheds. So these were reasonably comfortably off as far as the Irish go. In 1911, there's various places where you can get transcriptions. This one happens to be from my McWatters family in Belfast. All the information is on there, and you could say to yourself, oh, well, I don't need to actually look at the original because here's everything I need. including my address down here, which I'm going to note. And you think, oh, okay, that's good. This is another version, same census. And in this one, I found it interesting. They had actually included the fate of one of the men in the house, telling me that he got killed in 1917. So the people who put this one together were obviously, I'm guessing, a family history group, not just doing it from a history point of view, because they've looked further into what would somebody else want to know about this family. The actual census this time is very hard to read. And sadly, a lot of them are like this, things crossed out, not easy to read, and zooming in and enlarging it up. So in that case, having the work of somebody else is a help, but you've got to, I always try and look at the original and work out if the spelling's right, if the names are right, is the transcription actually correct? Because we all make mistakes, and sometimes that little mistake of a spelling can lead you up that garden path very quickly. Now, birth, marriage and death records in Ireland are fun. Fundamentally, if you're looking for anything before civil registration, go and find the parish church first. The parish registers are especially for the Roman Catholics. That's your best place to look before 1864. Cemeteries and graveyard records can be all over the place. Newspapers are really, really handy. Somewhere like the State Library you've got your library card, you can log in remotely and look at Irish newspapers from there. The Ulster Historical Foundation, they've got the Witness and the Banner for Ulster, which are two very important Protestant newspapers, which I was mainly looking for. And it also gave me a link to the Presbyterian Historical Society, which then gave me links to numerous church records that were digitised, and I was worth having the membership for a year to look at those digitised records. And these are records that are not on Ancestry or Find My Past. So this is a transcription for a marriage. Gives you all the details that you need. Tells me family history, film if I want to go through the Latter-day Saints. But fundamentally just the basic information you need. When I went to Ireland, I was lucky enough to actually see the register in the church. Now, if you're going to go to a church, tell them you're coming so that if they've got a register, they'll get it out for you. The important thing with this is my mystery McWatters, and the important thing is here, he and his wife both signed with a cross. They were illiterate. The other brothers weren't, they were younger. And it probably answers why on the ship manifest, they didn't know their name had been spelt wrong. Their accent probably gave the person writing it down the idea that maybe their name was McWatters, not McWatters. But at least it solved a problem for me in the fact that I knew they were illiterate. So I knew there could be spelling errors in other things, which was a good point. The other thing I learned is that when you're hunting in Ireland, if you come across a list called marksmen, it's not people who own a gun, it's literally people who sign with an X. Usually people for government things, for voting, for things like their marriage, death registers. If you come across a list with marksmen, have a look at it, because it could answer your problem for the illiteracy of the person that you're looking for. And that helps sort out other issues. So that was a bonus. If you ever get there, go to the church. Now this is from the Belfast City Council. I'm now looking at things like death. What can I find? Where can I find it? Can I get a transcription? Now, we've all used things like Find a Grave and Billion Graves. They don't have an extensive coverage for Ireland. both those sites have got some information. Most cemeteries that you're going to look at are small in Ireland. They'll have huge high fences around them, probably locked gates, very old headstones, not in particularly good order. But somewhere like the Belfast City Council, this is Alexander here, who died when he was 80, and he's in the Knock burial ground. Now, you go, oh, great, there's the date of death, there's when he's buried, he's 80, great, I don't need any more information. But if you go and click on the link, this brings you up with more detail of his address, gives you the grave number and section of the cemetery and the fact that he's an earth burial. And for £1.50, you can get a document set to you easy peasy. And you go, oh, that's great. Now I happen to go to Ireland. Before I went, check things. Now, this is the Knock Burial Ground Memorials for Find a Grave, and Alexander is not on here. And the 3 McWatters who are on here, there's no photos. It just gives me some information that roughly that's them. And this is the reason why, because as you can see, it's got a really big fence. There's no chance in hell I'm going to climb over that. The gate's normally locked. You have to get the key from the council or get someone to open it for you. And then when you get into the cemetery, it is very old and very run down. They mow between the headstones as the best they can, but this is a very old cemetery. So you go, well, okay, where else can I look? I'm trying to narrow this down. Books. Now, I'm a book person. This book gives me gravestone inscriptions and wills and biographical notes. So you go, bonus here. My computer, there. This is the McKee family who Alexander married into. So because I can't see the headstone anywhere, at least this is telling me that it's a railed enclosure, that Eliza erected it in memory of her husband, gives me the inscription that was on there, that their son John, and that she's there, and it gives me information about her will, and where it was proved, and the executors. And you go, you're not going to get that on Find a Grave. You won't get it on Billion Graves. If you go to the cemetery, you'd be very lucky if you even find the headstone, but it's in a book. So keep looking at what's available in libraries. So this is Newtownards, history, and you think, well, this might be interesting. It gives me a history of the actual graveyard, but it also tells me that lots of the headstones are no longer there. It does actually go into the headstones that were there when this book was done. It gives their transcriptions and information about them, tells me when the graveyard was set up. It tells me that the parish register from 1784 and the burials from 1787 gives me information in other places of where to look for more information. So it's worth reading everything you can come across for the area you're looking in. So the Ulster Family History Society, they've got a great website, and it lists all the graveyards in Ulster, tells you whether it's Roman Catholic, what parish it's from, what townland it's from. And when you click on, you get further information about that graveyard, about whether there's transcriptions and where they are. If you belong to a family history group, or you can go to a family history group, you'll find a lot of them have graveyard transcription booklets. So you might get lucky that your particular graveyard has been transcribed. It might have been done 15 years ago, 20 years ago, in which case the headstones have now deteriorated. So going to that book of the transcription is going to give you some more information. Emerald Ancestors is another place. This is a subscription place, but also gives you more information on where to find birth, deaths and marriages for Northern Ireland. It tells you your date range, and you can work your way through it. And here you can see it's also got census records, what's available. So if you knew specifically your family for a long time are in the area, it's worth having a subscription for a year, because they have heaps and heaps of records that are not available on the main two websites. Facebook is fabulous. Now, this is from our Facebook, from the Narre Warren Family History Group's Facebook, and I know in the last 2 or 3 months, while we'd all been in lockdown, our lovely web person has been putting up heaps and heaps of links and stories. A large number have been about Ireland. It's a great tool, because even if you don't actually belong to the family history group, you can still access information through Facebook, but somebody else has put together for you, and they usually link off to somewhere and give you more information. So Facebook is great, not just for family history groups and historical groups. This one is from County Clare, and it's a page specifically about this castle, all the people who live in it, for generations and generations, and it's constantly updated, and it's a bonus for me because my daughter-in-law is an O'Day, and this is her family heritage. And I found this at Facebook. Couldn't find it anywhere else, but great. Now, County Clare, most counties will have an archives and a library, and they'll have their own individual records. You can just work your way through each of these links. All these manuscripts and papers are really, really interesting. I got lost in the Griffiths family papers, even though it wasn't connected. It was just very interesting documents that have been digitised. The Library of Ireland has a very good website for genealogy, pedigrees, hints on searching, places to look, quite a few digitised records, worth having a look if you're, not sure where to go. Now, the County Clare Library is one of, I found them very, very good. This is migrants who've come to Australia from County Clare. Each of these links is digitised records. It tells you your time frames, what the ships are, and this is just the start of the page. They had lots and lots and lots of County Clare information that had gone to Australia. This is the County Clare surname index for the Griffiths valuation, and it's telling me that it's 1855. Handy, it gives you the townland, in some cases even the street, the parish and the poor law union. So it's narrowing down more information on your family of where to look, because if you've got the poor law union and you think they might have been in there, tells you which one you should be looking in. Library school roll books were there. Really handy, because apart from giving the children's name, their age, their address, what their dad's occupation was when they enrolled, and notes of where they had come from or where they went to. And there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names on here. Now, Eddie's Extracts is one of my favourite go-to places for Northern Ireland. Most of you would know about Cindy's Lists, which is very handy to give you places to look, or Genuki, which is great for, here's everything that we can connect to this one particular area. But it's sending you to another website. Eddie's Extracts is lots and lots of lists, transcriptions that people have done for Northern Ireland. And they're all in the one place. They're all fully searchable, and they're fabulous links and some very interesting things And I'm really glad I have people in Belfast, because this is my must go to every time. Now, these are his extracts for burial records, giving you the year, the date, the name of the person, their rank or profession, what they died of, where they lived.
What's wrong with yours?
Really, really good. And this is just one of the cemeteries that's been digitised on here. This is his newspaper index, telling you that it's a death notice or what it is, what paper it's come out of, and the date. So even though it won't necessarily take you to the newspaper, it does actually take you to their transcription of that particular death notice. It tells you where it is. So if you were then to go to our state library and then go through them to look at newspapers for the witness, there's all the date for all the details, and what else you might find out about them. So that's a really handy one for newspapers. This one I thought was fabulous. Daughters of ministers. We all have trouble finding women. Here's somebody who has sat there and traced the daughters of ministers in World War I, giving their name and what they did during the war, whether they were a nurse, they were a superintendent of the girls' messenger service. I thought that was really, really interesting project that somebody had put together. Glasgow Poor Relief is here, and you think, well, how come? I'm in Northern Ireland. A lot of Irish people went backwards and forwards between Belfast and Glasgow for work. My McWatters boys were all carpenters, and they went backwards and forwards between Glasgow and Belfast at least 3 times that I've found so far. And carpenters weren't just working in the shipyards. Both Belfast and Glasgow had large areas of weaving, and a lot of carpenters repaired the looms because they were wooden. They repaired the spinning wheels that the women used, and they worked in the dockyards. And wherever the work was, they went backwards and forwards. So this is giving me information on poor relief records held in Glasgow's Mitchell Library, which I've been to, telling me the birthplace of all these people in Ireland who have been registered for poor relief in Glasgow, and the year of their birth and the year of their application. Very handy, something to keep in mind. Firemen, and you think, well, great. Maybe somebody was a fireman, and if you, with Eddie's extracts, when you put your surname in, it will give you the list of all the places where that surname comes up, telling me their age, where they're born, and what their religion is. Another way of tracking people down. This is the Milford Street Infant Boys. This is from the Public Records Office in Northern Ireland. It's a Roman Catholic school. Tells me their street and whether they're orphans, and the occupation of their guardian, which isn't necessarily their father, but gives you more information. And this is 1917. So even though it's relatively recent time, it's 100 years ago, it still could be relevant to your family when you're coming forward. There's baptism records here. These are transcriptions, but they're very accurate and very good. Give you a lot of information, especially if you can't necessarily look at the original documents. And it tells you very clearly that this is a partial extract from 1908, and there's lots of other baptism records there. Same with marriage records. This one here is from 1845 to 1899 for this particular Presbyterian church, and gives you all the information you need. Tracking down, you could then go to the church and see if they can help you further, because it's telling you which church it is, you can look them up on the Google search and find their email address and send them an email and say, I'm from Australia, can I get a copy of? How much will it cost? And track them down that way. So Google and the web, there are so many ways of using Google search. Put in the name, put in the townland, put in combinations and see what comes up. Look at the Google Maps. There are heaps and heaps of maps and over different time frames. One way of narrowing things down. Ancestry and Find My Past have complementary information. Everything's not in the one place. What Ancestry has, Find My Past doesn't. If they've got transcriptions, they've got originals and vice versa. Then there's personal family groups. This one here I cannot pronounce, but it has links to County Cork resources that are free. The 1796 flax grower and spinning wheel entitlements is sort of like a census. It's the names of all the people growing flax and the names of all the people who owned a spinning wheel and were entitled to get paid for their work. And, you know, back in 1796, to find something that's giving you information about women is really important. Genuki has a list of every single library there is in Ireland. So once you establish the area you are looking in, head off to their library and find all the free resources they've got there. And Cindy's list with all the places to look is also another really, really great place to get extra information of what you can find. This is photographs you can find on Flickr and online. This is photograph is from the turn of the century. It's about 1902. It's Combay Street in Belfast of the bakery, and this is the bakery as it was in 2012. But you can find lots and lots of photos of buildings. So if you know that your family are bakers, you can hunt around and find it. Just put the name in and write on Google search just what McWatters Bakery Belfast, and this photo popped up.
Wow.
Newspapers. Now, we all love Trove, and we all know how to use Trove, I'm assuming, and you know to hunt around and find everything in the obituaries and everything you can in the newspapers here in Australia. If you've got your library card for the Victorian State Library, you can log in from home through their e-records, and this is their Irish papers starting from 1738. The Freeman's Journal, the Irish Independent, which goes up to today, Irish Times and Weekly Irish Times, which are at the Victorian State Library through their link, and you can sit at home and search them to your heart's content. It's not as simple and easy to search as it is with Trove, but once you've been doing it for an hour, you'll get into the hang of it. Find My Past has a lot of regional titles and some of the big major city papers, but not complete series. As I said, Eddie's Extract's got The Witness and the Banner of Ulster, so if you're looking for Presbyterians and Protestants in Belfast, that's where you would go. And of course, Trove through the National Library. If you've got a National Library card, you can access the British newspapers. You can also get the British newspapers through the State Library. And the reason you look in the British newspapers is because up until 1922, Britain ran Ireland. A lot of information on what's happening in Ireland is in British newspapers. Just because you can't find your paper for your local area doesn't mean you can't find the information somewhere else. Now, Ballymacarrett is a very small area on the edge of Belfast. It doesn't have its own newspaper, but I've come across references in 11 different newspapers now for Ballymacarrett. you will have the same thing happening if you go to the smaller townlands in, say, Derry or in Omagh, or you have to think, okay, it's a tiny little village, a tiny area. What's the next biggest area which is going to have a newspaper? And then go hunting for what the title of the newspaper is, and has it been digitised, or where can you find it? There are lots and lots of newspapers out there now. Now, Find My Past, I think, is the best for Irish records because they've got a lot of Catholic parish registers, the Quaker collection, prison registers, which are, you know, interesting, court records. The Island Dog Licence Register doesn't just tell you what sort of dog they owned or how many dogs, gives you the person's name and their address, and sometimes other information about have they neglected the dog, have they not paid their fines. It's a very interesting register, and it starts in 1866 and it goes for quite a long time, and it might be the only place where you find definitive information about the address of your person, because they might have left then to come to Australia, so they're not going to appear in Census. School registers for schools that are closed, because lots of schools, like they amalgamate them in Australia, closed, and the registers have been digitised. The Dublin Workhouse Register is here, and the landed estate court rentals and bankrupt estates. This has information for, you know, 500,000 tenant families are in these courts. So if you can work out that your family is a tenant farmer, this is a good place to have a look to see what other records you can find out about them. So family history is not instant. We are really definitely spoilt by our resources we have here. You have to sometimes consider getting help. A professional genealogist in Ireland might cost you a bit of money, but it's cheaper than an airfare, and at the moment you've got to pay business class just to go anywhere. So if you came across the brick wall, signing up to a professional genealogist, giving them as much detail as you can and giving them specific instructions of what you're looking for is actually going to save you money and time in the long run. It's worth doing. So if I'm going to now stop this,
yeah,
so I should disappear and come. Oh, look, here I am. Okay, now I'm going to hold up a book. This book should be, wait a minute, go that way.
That way.
Irish Records. Just about every family history group should have a copy of this book. It is out of date. It's been published for quite some time. When was it published? I think about 1988. If you come across a second-hand copy, get it, because even though it's out of date, it's done in a very simple way where it starts county by county. And in the county, it will give you a list of the census and census substitutes for your particular county. Now, I'm looking at Antrim, and it tells me that in 1635, the roll of free men of Belfast is a census substitute. So it's something, it gives you the list of things to go and look at for your particular county. It then gives you a breakdown of the parish churches. So for my Presbyterian family in Belfast, it tells me that, where's Ballymacarrett? It tells me that the register starts in 1837 and it's available at the church. So I know to get in touch with the church to find that register. If it says LC, it means that it's at the local church or the council council, or it's there, it might say lost. That means it doesn't exist anywhere. Don't waste your time looking for it because it's lost. If it was lost in 1988, it's not turning up now. It then gives you a breakdown of the Catholic churches, It gives you civil parishes. It gives you lists of commercial and social directories that are available for your area. It gives you lists of family histories that have been written for your area, gravestone inscriptions, what the major newspapers are for your area, where to go for wills and administration, a list of miscellaneous sources, societies. Now, obviously in the last 40 years, more societies and groups have started up, but this is a starting point, because every time you come across your parish, you should look at what's available and where it might be. So you might find them secondhand on eBay. You might find them in a library sale. That's where I got mine from, Heather, a Narre Warren library, when they were having one of their book sales.
It's a bit sad we threw it out, isn't it?
It is a bit sad, but my bonus, because I have it. But also, I know our family history group have that book. And that's the advantage of a family history group, is the books that they've got that other libraries don't have. The big advantage of a family history group is the people, because you can search on Ancestry for your heart's content on your own. You can search, as we all are at the moment, because there's nothing else to do because we're stuck at home. But people who've already searched your area or searched your country are going to have information, that little thing, like the lady who brought in her certificate for Victoria with Belfast on it. You're going to find people who've been there, done that, looked at it, or can help you. It's hard at the moment when we're all in lockdown to go, but all the family history groups are on Facebook. The local historical groups are on Facebook. They've got websites. They're all pumping out huge amounts of information at the moment. And the same applies in Ireland. If you go and look at historical groups, they're
Sorry,
online.
Jane, while you're talking, can you hold the book up again so I can just type in the name to everyone what it's called? Okay.
Oh, wait a minute, I've got to go that way.
Yeah.
That way. It's called Irish Records.
Yep.
And it's Sources for Family and Local History by James G. Ryan, R-Y-A-N. It's a nice big book. And it's really, really practical information.
James who? Sorry?
Ryan.
Yeah,
R-Y-A-N.
Irish Records, Sources for Families and Local Histories by James Ryan.
Yeah.
Okie dokes. Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous book. Now, I know also there is so many newsletters you can access. There are magazines that you can access. There are books that have been published. Family history groups have got lots of information that is not on the internet. And because we tend to hang on to stuff, which is really handy, they're a bonus. And if you look at somewhere like Warrnambool, they've got a very good historical group down there. Warrnambool is next door to Port Fairy, which was originally named Belfast, and there's a lot of Irish immigrants settled in that area. That's a good place to follow their Facebook page, to follow their website, because they've got a lot of Irish people living in the area in the time frame most of us are looking at. Now, we all have lots of convicts if we're lucky. Some of us have Irish convicts if we're lucky. There's a huge amount of information on the internet for convicts, Irish, convict girls, orphans here in Australia, and linking back to places in Ireland. Irish magazine Irish Roots has its own website, has lots and lots of information. They put out 4 magazines a year, but their website is putting out information all the time. So worth having a look at. When our library's reopened, when the beautiful Lorraine Taylor Research Room is reopened, we've got the Irish Roots magazine in there going back ages. You can come in and have a look. Even things like microfiche, which sounds like you're talking about something from the Ark. There are microfiche that are not digitised. They've not been indexed. They're sitting there because technology superseded them, but it might have that little missing link that you're looking for your particular family. All of the links that are on the handout, they've all got really good records at them. There are an Irish groups that you can join. If you've got a clan like the O'Days, they have their own website for every O'Day in the world. They're all connected back to this place in County Clare. It's a bit like the Scottish clans. You also have to look at, when you're thinking about how did they come to Australia, most of the ships actually left from Liverpool that were carrying Irish immigrants. So if you can't find your shipping record coming out of Belfast or out of Dublin, have a look at coming out of Liverpool, and the second choice is coming out of Bristol, because a lot of those ships carried the Irish immigrants. Also have a look at things like, did they go to America first and then come to Australia? A lot of the young men travelled to America, left from San Francisco, went to Australia. A lot went to New Zealand before they came to Australia. So don't get disheartened and think, oh, they swam here. They didn't. They've just come on a different adventure to get here. They also didn't necessarily get off the ship where they finished up. A lot got off in Fremantle. Quite a few got off in Sydney to then come down to Melbourne, or got off in Sydney and went on a coastal ship up to Queensland. Look at your other options of places of where to look to narrow it down. Because if you have that hole of 5 or 6 years and you go, well, I've got them here and they've got them there, what were they doing in between? Think about what they could be doing in between. Could they have been in jail? Could they have been in a poorhouse? Could they have been in military service? Because a lot of Irish men served with the British military. If they were a tenant farmer, could they have been helped to come to Australia by the Lord of the Manor, like the Monteagle families that came out, and a lot of them settled down around Pakenham and Richmond and somewhere else, I can't remember. But they all came out together. Lord Monteagle put a ship together of his tenant farmers who were prepared to come to the other side of the world, and they tended to all stay together. And his book, I think it's in our library, but I know I've seen it, on those particular immigrants with biographies on each of the families. So yes, I'm saying join a family history group, and please join our family history group. And if not, please look at our Facebook page and send us some messages. And that's it.
Thank you, Jane.
That's all right.
Now, we've had Karen
Questions.
wrote at the start that we may be interested to know that the Griffiths valuation was done by the brother of her fifth great-grandmother, Catherine Griffin. So that's really cool. Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is cool. That's really great to have that in the family, Karen. Now, Jane has mentioned Ancestry and Find My Past. So they are still available to use at home through our library during this lockdown period. So at least until the end of August, you can use Ancestry, and Find My Past will allow home access for the full database, same with Ancestry, from end of lockdown period plus another 6 weeks or something. So if you go to our website, the library website, under something or other, Tracy, you can tell me, under resources, I think it is.
I think it's under online.
Online resources.
Online resources, sorry. You can access Ancestry and find my past and look up all the Irish records that Jane has mentioned. Let me just see now. Someone just asked whether there are many Victorian towns that had Irish names which have been renamed, and is there a listing? And I've suggested that she look at the book, and I've sent you all a message, the Angus Watson book, Lost and Almost Forgotten Towns of Colonial Victoria, because they do tell you the original name. So are there any other suggestions that you would have?
Well, just get out a street directory, because you'll find a lot of names like Killarney is down in the Warrnambool area. What's the one going north? Starts with K. The other one starts with K. Koroit. There's a lot of Western District, Portland, Port Fairy, Warrnambool, around that area. A lot of early names that were Irish names. And then if you go up around the Donald area, Maryborough, in that triangle there's quite a few areas with Irish names, but they're probably lost, like the lost places now. But it's more a case of lateral thinking. And as you say, go and have a look at a book of all the lost names.
Yeah. Now, I'll just continue with the messages. Great information, thanks. And I've learned a lot today. To look for my Kellys from Tipperary. And this has been amazing. Thanks, Jane. And let me just go through. Sorry. Thank you, Jane. That was fantastic. This has been such an informative session. Thank you, Jane, Heather, and the Narre Warren Family History Group. And very informative. That's really good. And then Pauline's just purchased the Irish Records book on eBay, all from the USA. But she just purchased a copy for $17 Australian, including postage. Well done. So that'll be like a run on this book now. Now, Janine says, any hints for tracing the Irish in Ballarat region in the gold rush?
Yes, when lockdown finishes, if you go up to the new Eureka Centre, which is where the Ballarat Historical Society, the Ballarat Family History Group, and a couple of other, and I think Ballarat Prov and somebody else are now located at the Eureka Centre. They've got extensive records there. The churches in Ballarat have all got their early registers still. So if you know they're Catholics, make a list of the Catholic churches and systematically work your way through them to see if your family's there. Also have a look in Geelong, because a lot of, if you're looking at the gold rush time, a lot of the ships stopped at Geelong. They got off, they collected their supplies, and they walked to Ballarat. And when things didn't work out, they walked back to Geelong and settled down in the Geelong area around Warn Ponds, heading towards Colac. There's a lot of Scottish and Irish immigrants went down there when the gold ran out, or they went off to other gold fields. But the Eureka Centre is like a mini Trove sort of thing. It's a one-stop shop now. Everything's there in the one place. It's just that we can't get to it, and I don't think they're open, like most of us are not open at the moment. But that's where I'd go. And after that, I'd go to the Mechanics Institute in Ballarat. They've got a very extensive library and a big archives, and open to the public, and very friendly staff. And you can spend all day there, and there's a nice cafe 2 doors down when you're starving. Go down, come back, and continue looking.
Okay, thank you. Now, any other questions? If you have any other questions for Jane, you can email me. Oh, one new message. You can email me. Oh, St. Francis, First Roman Catholic Cathedral, does it have original records?
They've got their original registers. The registers are in the churches still. When they did the birth deaths and marriages, you know, in our digger indexes on birth deaths and marriages, you've got the early church records.
Yeah.
They were transcribed into the digger index. The parish registers continued on after that. So even if you go and look in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, the registers are there. You just have to hope that they're in reasonable condition, that they will give you access to them, or it might be a case of they'll photograph the relevant page and charge you for it. You just have to work with that particular rector or reverend or minister or whoever is there. I've had good success by emailing overseas to churches. I start off with, I'm from Australia, this is what I'm looking for, these are my dates, have you got, and I've only had one case so far where I haven't got the answer, either a transcription or a scan of an original document. And the other thing with going to the UK these days, lots and lots of the churches are no longer open. They're only open during a service because of vandalism and vagrancy. So especially if you're looking at a smaller church in a regional area, you'd best to get in touch with them and say you're coming in 2 or 3 years' time when we're allowed to leave the country, or get in touch with them now and say, this is the name, I believe this is the date, can you look in your register and offer to pay. Some of them say, I mean, the one in St Anne's in Belfast, I offered to pay and it was no, you've travelled all the way to here, I didn't have to pay. But the other ones I've paid, you know, a few pounds, but it's lot cheaper than flying. Maybe not as much fun, but cheaper.
Thank you. Now, otherwise, 2 more comments. Very informative. Thank you, and thanks for the informative session. So I think we can all thank you, Jane, for your interest in that informative session. And as I said, if you have any other queries, email me. I sent you all an email today, and I can pass the emails on to Jane if that's okay. And otherwise, you can look at her wonderful list with lots of.
I'd like to thank Eileen, who's our secretary, because she made it look so schmick.
Oh, she did.
She did, yes. I gave her all the information, and she turned it into a beautiful looking document with colour. So I'd like to thank Eileen for doing that.
Thank you, Eileen, as well. She's a wonderful girl, Eileen.
She is a wonderful girl.
Yes.
Yeah, and another reason to belong to a family history group.
That's true. They're based at the Cranbourne Library, even though they're called Narre Warren. They've been at the Cranbourne Library with us for 2-3 years nearly now.
Yep, nearly 3.
And of course, closed most of this year. But of course, you know, eventually we'll all be reopened again. The library will be open, they'll be reopened. And so come down and see them Tuesdays and Saturdays, 11 till 3 at the moment, or possibly at the once we reopen. And they are very friendly, have lots of resources. And as Jane said, family history groups and local history groups often have resources that aren't on the internet. So you just need to accept that sometimes you're not going to get everything on the internet, but so it's always worth a visit to sunny Cranbourne when we're open. There's a nice cafe right next to us now. It's a really good cafe as well, so it's worth coming down. If not only to see the family history group, but to go to the cafe and to go to the library, of course.
And to go to the library, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
people.
And I've just had, where can you find the Watson book? I know we have it. I know you have it at the family history group. That's Lost and Colonial Towns of Victoria. You have that at the family history group, but of course we're not open. We might have it at the library, but I think it was published 2003, so you might find it on eBay or through a second-hand book dealer. Now.
Yeah, and with the handout, because I was trying to cover everything for you, don't get the giggles when you see 1530 as the first one, because that's the first actual records for Ireland, is the Herald's visitation, because it wasn't until 1922, when Northern Ireland separated from Ireland, that the British influence as such over the whole of Ireland stopped. So there's a huge amount of early Irish history. The records are actually English. So if you're lucky enough to get back to those sort of time frames past the 1800s, keep looking in the English records, and particularly look in Glasgow. There's an awful lot of Irishness in Glasgow. Either that or there's a lot of Scottishness in Belfast.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Jane. Thanks for Jane will be back in 2 weeks' time when she'll be talking about shipping records. Swimmers. That'd be really good. I'm back next week talking about sources of information for local history, like photographs, maps, etc. And then Jane is back the next week. So thank you, Jane and the Family History Group, for participating in our Zoom talks. And we'll see you all hopefully next week, or you'll be back in 2 weeks to see Jane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks.
Thank you.